Welcome to the Embodiment Podcast. This show is for you if you see the body as more than a brain taxi. It's for people interested in coming home to the body as a holistic aspect of who we are and how we live. Episodes contain practical tips, exercises you can take away, and interviews with embodiment specialists from around the world. I'm your host, Mark Walsh. So, something a little special on today's episode. I got to thinking, we've got loads of episodes that have already been through, and it'd be good to kind of review them. We've been done nearly 100 of them now, believe it or not, which is pretty crazy. It doesn't feel so long ago I started it, but I've been recording them at quite a rate and all kinds of people on. And I thought, what would be a good way to review them? And there's a few things I've come up with. So one is to offer experiments based on different episodes. And then if experiments kind of appeal to you, you might go back and, listen to that particular episode. So I thought this would be really practical. I got the idea of a podcast offering experiments from a particular podcast that's out there. It's called the Slow Home Podcast, and they get people to do experiments as part of that. And, obviously an embodiment we're big on practices, like building a practice, but sometimes an experiment goes ahead of that. By experiment, I'm not talking about, test tubes or anything like that, but actually trying something out and trying it out for a particular period of time, whether it be a week or a month, 2 or 3 months. That would be, an experiment in this sense. So you can pick timeframes, and I'll go through different podcasts, and they'll all be suggestive of different experiments. So podcast number 1 was what is embodiment? Still one of the most downloaded ones. Probably not really an experiment that could come specifically just from definitions. Though you can certainly look into different people's version of what embodiment is. One might be to ask all the embodiment people in your life, what is embodiment, and collate the different responses and look for the common ground. Episode 2 was on centering. It's both just for myself. Obviously, super practical centering, state regulation. So a very good experiment there. We can try every day centering once a day or even 5 times a day for a month and do an experiment on that and report back into the podcast. I'd love it if anyone who listened to this, instead of just listening to an episode, there's only so much good like learning about embodiment can do you. So these experiments, if you're kind of wanting to go a bit deeper or wider into embodiment, I just love it if you took one of these. I'm going to offer you about 70. So, maybe pick one of them and decide if that's the one. So episode 3 was with Adrian Harris. That was all sort of about the body and nature. So the experiment there could be to go outside every day, for example, for 20 minutes a day, in the outdoors, or you could, scale that up. It could be 2 hours a day or whatever works for you. Okay, episode 4 was with Miles Kessler. We were talking about a lot of different stuff, so I'm not sure if there's an experiment that I think is underrated podcast, that one. Underrated episode talking about Aikido and meditation. And here's the experiment I'd suggest for that is to find one way you can bring your spirituality more into daily life, the marketplace, as he puts it, and do that every day for a month. So I'd say most of these experiments, 1 or 2 months is probably good, though if that feels too much, do a week. That's a hell of a lot better. Exercise 5 was by me, it was on practice. And again, an experiment kind of might lead to a practice. I don't want to give a particular one for that. Alexandra Vilvoskaya, we talked a lot about all sorts of things, episode 6, but there was the cultural body. So I would say a good experiment there would be to actually try different things from different cultures and look at them through that lens. Like, how is the Japaneseness informing the Aikido, or the Argentineness informing the Tango? Or even to sort of say, every day pick another culture, pick a different culture, one for 30 days, there's more than 30 countries, and say, okay, how would I be embodied if I was more Russian today? If I was doing my shopping in a more Israeli way or a more French way? If I was doing my parenting in a more Brazilian way or a more Canadian way, what would that be like? Obviously, there's potential stereotypes in there, but I think that would be hugely rich as an experiment. If you want to go extreme, another one could be to spend a month abroad. You might be doing this anyway, and notice how that impacts your own embodiment. I remember I spent a month in Israel one year, and it really impacted me to the point when I got back, English people thought I was being rude. Working with normal people. So episode 6, that was another one from me. So this is where we looked at how to take embodiment to everybody else. So an experiment here, for example, could be to try to teach an embodied practice every day of the month to someone who isn't normally into embodiment, and notice how you explain it, what you teach them, etc. Okay, next one. The Seasons of the Body. That was another one with me. So I don't do so many myself now, but I did at the beginning before I got all the guests sorted out. So the experiment there could be to do beginnings quicker or slower, or to do endings quicker or slower on a number of things that you do throughout that month, for example. Okay, Gary Carter, experiment there. I'd say try some Scaraveli yoga. Simple one from Gary. If you can find a Scaraveli yoga class or a more somatic sort of yoga class, that would be a good experiment. Another one would be to look at a different part of your own anatomy every morning and notice how that affects your body, like studying the width of the spine or how far the arms actually go in. These things can have quite an impact. Okay, number 10. God, this is going to take a while, isn't it? It's going to be a bit of an epic episode. I'm glad I got a coffee here. I'm recording this at nearly 11 o'clock at night on a beautiful, beautiful day. I just had a great day doing Aikido and contact improv, walking along the beach. A really good day off. That's what an embodiment teacher does on his day off. All right, so Paul Linden, I think this is one of the best episodes. There's a real rapport between me and Paul because we've known each other for a long time. The Gary one as well had a lot of rapport too. He's another person I've known a long time. But the one with Paul was pretty special. If you haven't heard that, I'd really recommend it. We look at trauma, we look at Aikido, we look at centering, of course. And again, you could do a centering experiment based on Paul's work. One experiment could be to try an Aikido class or two. You know, that could be a nice experiment. Okay, working with the body for trainers and coaches was episode 11. One of my real areas of expertise. If you're a trainer or coach, really do check that out. Obviously there's experiments. If you are a trainer or coach, like for example, centering with all your clients that you take for that month, I promise you will not regret that. Number 12 was with Roman Norris, and that was a lot about parenting. Very different from some of the others. Yeah, Roman's very cool. I would say experiment there, get pregnant. No, don't do that. It might be something around, embodiment with childcare if you have children. 13 was Vince. That was on addiction. So the experiment there I'd recommend would be to make a little diary every night for a month of what you have some compulsive tendencies towards. So it's actually a really popular episode, this one. I would say, we're all compulsive if we're not full-blown addicts for something. And I would say that could be a good experiment to sort of notice some of those addictive tendencies around food or money or sex or Facebook or whatever. Even if you're not, full, in need of a 12-step program addict, that would be super helpful. 14 was from Don Hanlon Johnson, one of the granddaddies of the somatic world, a real elder. I'd recommend everyone to that podcast. Super warm and generous guy too. In terms of experiment, it was more of a kind of wide-ranging look through embodiment, so I don't have a ready experiment there. He's a Rolfer though, so you could try getting a deep structural integration Rolfing lesson as an experiment. Okay, number 15 was Adam Barley, 5 rhythms teacher. The experiment there is pretty obvious. Find a 5 rhythms class or dance around crazy around your living room if you can't get to one. 16, Jamie Catto. So Jamie is my favourite ex-rock star. He's a good mate of mine now, actually. Adam and Jamie are both good mates. The people a lot of friendships I've sort of deepened through the show, like people I had on and got on well with that I was already in contact with. A lot of the sort of 20 or 30 first ones are people I was already in contact with. But I sort of made a choice that after having some of these great conversations to deepen friendships, like Jamie and I call each other nearly every week now, usually from some airport or just after some course or another. So a thing you could do for Jamie, let me think for his. I'd say like every day inquiring into like, what's my purpose? Am I on purpose today? He does some really good stuff around purpose. Rachel Blackman, my main colleague from EFC. If you come to EFC this year, you'll get to meet her. Experiment from Rachel's podcast, it was a lot about improv, would be to do something improvisational every day. Do something improvisational every day for a month. Best embodiment books. It's not really an experiment, but you could just buy some of those on Amazon. Number 19, Adam Wilder. So this was a fun one. Another guy working with like improv and tantra and different things like that. I'd suggest authentic communication for his. So talk for 5 minutes every day with someone, a partner or a friend, where you really communicate honestly how you are and listen deeply. Tatiana, so she was based in Germany. She's doing some yoga, some music stuff. Nothing's jumping out at me for that one, but it was a good little interview. If you're into music, okay, let's do music then for that one. So it's only one of the things she talked about, but the experiment there could be to listen to a different type of music every day, like as you walk to work, in your lunch break, after work, like a different genre, a different artist, and see how that affects your embodiment by diving into that today. Laurie Booth, modern dancer, simple experiment. Go to a modern dance class. They, in most major cities, have modern dance classes for adults, or even at colleges in smaller cities that are quite cheap. So check one out. Okay, Jamie Zimron talking about Aikido, so you could do that as an experiment. Also, she's talking about golf. So it's a bit of a wild card, but if you're sort of into like crazy alternative hippie stuff, do a golf lesson or go try hit some golf swings. See how there's something about the fact that it's kind of Western and normal that may actually expose some unusual patterns. Gerard was talking about lots of things, including wearable technology. I'd say borrow your friend's Fitbit, buy a Fitbit, look on your phone, actually do some sort of data crunching around your embodiment. It's not, for me, it's potentially a barrier to embodiment to do that, but I think there's some interesting stuff. Julia Davis, so she did bleed yoga. So Julia, I learned a lot on that one. She's a really generous person too. So I'd say look at in a month, really tracking your menstrual cycle if you're a woman and you're menstruating. If you're not, then see if you can find a willing female friend or partner who, without being creepy here, obviously, who will kind of keep you informed throughout that month. I feel like not to be scared of that. We could actually really learn a lot. And sometimes, it's something I'll say to my wife, so where are you in your cycle right now? How do you feel? And, she's cool with that, obviously. And, that's been interesting for me. I'm like, okay, so that's how it is right now. And, we all have women in our lives if we're not women, so it could be useful. Stephen Braybrook, so the movement man, this is on biomechanics. You could do some experiments around biomechanics for him, or around anatomy. A few things you could do there, though specifics not coming to mind. 27, Ryan. So Ryan's a Ashtanga teacher. So the experiment there could be to do a little bit of Ashtanga yoga every morning, or another vinyasa class every morning. I've been using Yoga Glow. There's a really nice, safe introduction there. Matt Hill, the gentleman of martial arts. Such a good interview, this one. Matt, I really feel warmly towards Matt after having done this interview. It's my first contact with him, student recommended. And, he does Systema. So that could be something to check out, a Systema class. Brooke Thomas, so she was doing meditation, a lot of stuff on embodied meditation. She also has an excellent podcast, so you could listen to one of her podcasts every day for a month, or do some body-based meditation. 30 was best embodiment teachers. No real experiment there, but that's been pretty popular. I did a little mini one offering the free book and short course. Oh, Philip Smith, so senior Aikido teacher. Try out a martial arts class. That could be an experiment you could do from there. Or he was also talking about more kind of intense, unreasonable, extreme training. So you could try safety first, please, but taking your training up a notch in terms of intensity, as martial artists from his tradition want to do. Audrey and Sophie did food on number 33. I think this is such a huge topic. Lots of experiments you can do around food, like fasting, mindful eating, looking at really what you are eating, just fully experiencing your hunger, your meal, and your satiation. That they are, looking at taking the diary of the emotional ways you eat. Super loads of experiments you can do for a month around food. I think there's a lot of leverage in that. Steve Rose, so a real gentleman, one of the most senior martial artists we've had on, karate guys, monks, and Tai Chi. So you could try a bit of Tai Chi or karate for a month, do an experiment in that. 35, Rafe Kelly, another person who's become a good mate of mine. His movement stuff is fantastic. So experiments there could be try moving differently every day. Since having him on, I've been like sort of swinging on things and doing odd things in the park, and it's just a lot of fun. His big things like tree climbing as well. So you could try and climb a tree every day for a month. Okay. Yeah, months I think is good for these. As I said, you can always do a week or a couple of months if you want to really start getting a habit, but at that point it's become practice, right? 36, Christopher Gladwell. So doing some nice yoga stuff. An experiment there could be to do some yoga. Pretty simple one. Chris's yoga is kind of embedded in nature and interconnectedness. So that could be the inquiry there. 37, Michael. So Michael's one was on craniosacral. An experiment could be to get a session in that. It's a very beautiful, gentle body. body work. And well worth exploring. 38, John Kramer. So this was a lot of fun, this one. John does improv, so you could try going to an improv class, a stand-up class. We also did in that one. It's actually, by the way, I'm reading these in the way they were, in the order that they were recorded, just because that's what I have the list on. The order they're released is slightly different. Like John's one, for example, we thought might be too controversial to release, and then eventually we listened to it back and went, you know what, it'll be fine, fuck it. And we haven't had any major fallout from it, but it's pretty risque and on the edge. So that could be your experiment, for a month. Could be saying things you don't normally say, like actually being risky, being on the edge. So that was 38. As I said, these were released in different reasons. Sometimes it was to do with like wanting to help people out if they were like selling a book, or they were on holiday, would have released it or whatever. Sometimes it was a bit more random than that through editing factors. What have we got? Beverly Nolan. So does some embodied movement therapy, embodied therapy stuff. So that could be an experiment. Steve. So Steve is coming from a background of Indonesian martial arts. I thought it was a fascinating interview, that one. A bit underrated, I would say, by many people. It's got underlistened. Some of these I could just think of amazing interviews. They get very few listens. And other ones like, oh, that's fine, and they get loads. Steve is definitely one of the former. So you could try the Indonesian martial arts as an experiment. He also talks about all sorts of things to do with like health and functionality and well-being. Well worth a listen. Probably will get an experiment out of it. David Mooney. So David Mooney is from dance background, from Ireland. We talk about Irish culture a lot in the episode with him. Experiment there could be another dance experiment, like free dancing, or to try a movement medicine class. So we have Mark Aquaviva on number 42. Again, yoga, so it could be a yoga experiment. And then 43, Nick Allison Jankel. We talk a lot about purpose there, so it could be another kind of trigger for a purpose experiment. We're talking about raving, so an experiment there could actually be to go to back old school raving to a nightclub. Pavel, so this is another fun one. He was talking about like swords. An experiment there, buy a weapon, one that's legal in your country, don't get arrested with it or hurt anyone with it, and actually, like really experience what it's like to play with a weapon. Okay, safety first as ever. If any kids listening to this, don't hurt yourself. But yeah, I think there's some great experiments you could do there. Trina, so Trina's a Pilates teacher. Again, I think Pilates can be underrated and it's worth trying, so don't be a snob about that. That could be the experiment there. Experiments involve a practice. You don't have to be every day. It could be, for example, do a couple of classes a week for a month, and that's enough to get like a good taste of something. One class usually isn't. Gayatri Tantra, so you could try and experiment some connection with a partner or some eye gazing type practices. Charlie Badenhop, interesting one from talking about Japanese culture. So Charlie's episode, I'm trying to think of an experiment for that. Some little NLP things that could be done as an experiment. Joseph from Fighting Monkey. Oh God, what's to offer for an experiment there? It's so broad and it's so interesting. This has been one of our most popular podcasts, actually. God, where to begin on an experiment? Listen to that episode. You'll get ideas, I'm sure, from that one. Really is, I think it's one of the more interesting, innovative people we've had on. Derek, so Derek's from Tai Chi background, that's also been popular, so you could do a Tai Chi experiment. Michaela Boehm, another type Tantri person, some interesting things to say about intimacy, so you could do an experiment in intimacy. Russell Delman, so from the Feldenkrais background, doing stuff from meditation. His socially engaged somatics, I think we called that episode. Again, one of our most popular episodes, if not the most popular one, actually. It's hard to get the data because it's sort of two sets of data. The analytics people sort of changed the system after a few months, so it was tricky to see. Like Jamie's one got loads and loads of hits as well, so that's going to be up there. But anyway, it's not a popularity contest. So Feldenkrais, do some Feldenkrais. There's no reason you can't do an experiment like that. I'm going to go do some after this actually tonight before I go to bed. Feldenkrais you can download freely online, awareness through movement lessons. And you could easily do a short one every day for a month. Same with Jay, who's another Feldenkrais person. Her running episode's incredibly popular. Another experiment, go running. Yeah. Run every day, again, can be underrated by those of us who are more snobby in the embodiment world. Chandler's, this was fun. What else? Experiments there. Again, it's sort of movement stuff like rape. So it could be about moving outdoors and diversifying your movement, taking away all your furniture for a month, for example, moving on the floor. Linus Johansson, some cool movement-based yoga type stuff. In terms of like his stuff, look for his classes online. If you're in Scandinavia, definitely get to one of his classes. There's a lot of people trained by him in Scandinavia. Elizabeth Gray, trauma experiments. I don't think I want to recommend trauma as an experiment, though. Maybe more profoundly, perhaps this could be an impetus for treating trauma that you've had for a long time. So the thing with trauma is time doesn't really heal. That your brain's stuck in that moment, and sometimes 50 years later, you see people that were shell shocked in a war, and 50 years later they've still. My granddad was one of them. People still got that. So maybe profoundly, this could be an impetus for getting some EMDR or somatic experiencing or something that's going to help. So yeah, I really recommend you do that. It took me a few years before I treated a lot of the trauma that I had, and I was very happy when I did. I'm actually about to do a sort of second round of treatment, so I feel like, I've got down to sort of 10% hyperarousal, and I want to get that right down to maybe 1%, Yeah. All right, Dave Wardman. So his experiments about stretching, you can look into his stretching work and experiment there. Ariana Rabinovich, experiment. Here's an experiment. She did a great little episode on like rationality in yoga, and an experiment would be to just do your normal classes, your normal practices, your normal teaching, whatever you normally do. I know most people that listen to this have got some kind of body thing going on, and just listen for the bullshit, and actually challenge the teachers and say, look, is that really true? How do you know that twist detoxified the liver or whatever? If you feel like you can challenge them without ruining the relationship, great. If you can't, that's interesting. Yeah, like looking rationally and scientifically at things, like looking things up in a textbook that you've been told for a month. Dan Doherty, so he's another Tai Chi guy. This has been, again, one of the most popular ones. Some good stuff in that. Could be, again, a Tai Chi experiment. Pretty easy to do in most neighborhoods. 60 David Weinstock, he was looking at nonviolent communication. So I'd really recommend looking into NVC, nonviolent communication, and doing an experiment in that. For example, there's some features of NVC like separating out observations and evaluations, or making requests. So some simple linguistic practices. Bruce Furtman, Alexander technique, experiment in touch. So notice how you touch people. Notice the quality of your touch. Notice the quality that people touch you, the amount of touch. You can do a little diary on that. Keith Martin Fifth, Kung Fu. This is one of my favoritist ones. He's just a kindred spirit. We just immediately clicked and had fun. And we talked a lot about integral theory. So it could be an experiment based on sort of looking at levels of development, for example. Or, you could do some Kung Fu for a month. Julie Martin. Julie's great. She's doing a very cool kind of yoga. So again, it could be a yoga experiment. I would just like to publicly apologize to Julie. I listened back the episode that she did with me, and I just talked all over her. It's been pointing out to me that I occasionally talk over people. Interrupt. Sometimes I deliberately interrupt, and that's okay. And sometimes it's just, that banter. But in this case, I feel like I was just a bit hyper. I wasn't listening very well. So Julie, if you're out there, I'm sorry. It was a crappy interview. I think I want to have you back on the show to say sorry again by giving you some more publicity and putting you out there again. You've got a good message. And I'm looking forward to actually seeing you soon. By the time this goes out, me, you, Gary Carter, and Linus are all going to be in a yoga class together, hopefully. Oh no, I'm confusing with someone else. It's another excellent yoga teacher, but I know you may have been in Brighton at some point. So I'm going to catch you. I'm probably going to be on your teacher training as well next year, at least the intensive part of a week intensive in tri yoga. So sorry again. Public apology to Julie. Not too big to know when I screw up. Okay, Nikki Nab Levy. So that was Nikki did some good stuff on Pilates as well, on exercise stuff. So she was talking about weightlifting and all sorts of things like that. So here's the experiment. If you're like a weird hippie embodiment person, go to a gym every day for a month and look for what has value in that gym. Look for what has value there, because it's easy to discount some good stuff. 65, Brooke McNamara. This was a gorgeous one. I think this is one of my most Certainly, it's definitely up there in the top few personal favourites for me, with Paul Linden and a couple of others. I don't know what experiment to make, Zen meditation, I don't know, dance, I'm just making stuff up. Listen to that podcast, and maybe the experiment could be to bring a little bit of that authenticity to your life. It dies. So this was my Israeli friend. Contact Improv. Try a Contact Improv class. I did one today myself. Tremendous fun. Yeah. Melissa. So Melissa talked about kink, tantra, well, kink mostly. The experiment, I'd say, is to try something kinky. I don't necessarily need to hear all the details in the Facebook group. Try something a bit kinky for a month, bit of spanking or whatever. 6 was Nita. So again, we covered tantra. We covered a lot of sort of interesting gender stuff. So there could be some experiments around that, like noticing how your gender is changing your embodiment on a daily basis. Carol Horton, excellent yoga person. Should be up by the time this comes up. We delayed that for various reasons. Anyway, Carol could be a yoga experiment. Catherine Brunei Young, so she's the strength person. So do some strength training for a month. Do some weights. Do some strength training. Notice how that makes you feel. Actually, can be profound, particularly if you find you're someone that's a bit wishy-washy, you're a bit prone to depression. Muscularity of strength training can be profound if done in a somatic way. So I highly recommend that. I was lifting weights for a couple of years. Annika, so that was the yoga therapy. So you could try that out as an experiment. What else? Cats, another yoga one. That was fun, from Yoga Journal. They have some really good online classes, so that could be your experiment through Yoga Journal. Yakov Dunning-Khan, so he does movement medicine, so check that out. Adrian Iselin, so he was talking about yoga and tantra. Kind of covered those in experiments, I think, so far. Constance Claire Newman, she did Alexander technique, so book yourself in a lesson for that. It might be all you can afford for an experiment. But Monica Gross, she was also on talking about Alexander. I think it's Monica's website, if I remember rightly, that has loads of like little cool videos and like free stuff you can do. So yeah, that could easily be an experiment. I did one on martial arts then. I thought it was about time by this point I did one on my own again. So I did one on martial arts. Yeah, this is, again, an easy experiment to do. Try a martial arts class. There's different things out there for different people. Dave Rock, our poet, came on. Write a poem every day. Even if you don't show it to anyone, if you think it's no good, write a poem every day. Obviously, feeling your body, embodied poetry as a practice. He also talks about a lot about authenticity. So that could be a practice, like how authentically can you speak? Most of us are lying at least a little bit, a lot of the time. Evangelist, so he did a dance one on fire rhythms and dance. He also did some stuff about money, which I thought was interesting. So maybe notice your relationship to money. This is a profound embodied practice. There's a kind of tantra to it, and money mindfulness. I did a video on, find that on YouTube. And really look at money as a theme. I think that's underlooked at by a lot of people. And it struck me, it's pretty interesting. We've got to episode 80 before really anyone talks about money in much depth. Miles talks a little bit about it, actually. Marcella, so she talks about trauma. So again, I just encourage you that. Bibiana, the role for, but she also talks about, I think, again, underrated. I'd love to see this episode get more. It's just a delightful episode where she talks about, like in life, practices in life. So how can you better integrate could be the practice here, not just to try these extreme practices. Or like today I did Aikido and I did Contact Improv. They're great practices, great, 3.5 hours of my day, did a bit of meditation in the morning. But how can I, if I was doing this experiment, it'd be like, how do I bring that Aikido into my harmonizing with people, Just a little example. I was on the way back from Aikido and this guy like sat on the floor and he just wasn't in a good way, And I just said, hello, mate, how you doing? And I was using my Aikido to kind of blend with him, to listen to him, to center myself, to kind of feel out the situation. And I think, I don't know if I did any good there or not. I don't know, take him anywhere to social services or whatever, but maybe a little bit of kindness did some good. And I don't always do that. Quite often don't, if I'm honest. This is, I'm guessing, a homeless guy, certainly someone that's had some mental illness issues. And it just part of coming from Aikido, it seemed like that was just a sort of daily life thing to do. Yeah, and she also talks a lot about rest. She's got this Spanish perspective of sort of a little bit like, hey, life's to be enjoyed. So that could be the experiment. Enjoy your fucking life. Yeah. Okay, Jacopo. So beautiful yoga, but again, let's roll with this Mediterranean feel. So yeah, Bibiana's we released much earlier than we recorded it, by the way, because of hosting Paul Linden. Jacopo, his some beautiful stuff about yoga, but also beautiful stuff around this enjoying life. So again, it sounds like no big deal. But to really enjoy your life for a month, to wake up every day and be like, how can I enjoy today? Like, put it in your diary. How can I maximize enjoyment? To eat food you enjoy, to enjoy the food you eat, to take pleasure in music and sex and children and football and all the things Italians do, philosophy and all the different levels you can enjoy. Is a profound experiment. So I'd love someone to do that and then report back on the Facebook group. In fact, anyone who does an experiment, please tell us on the Facebook how it's gone. Even if I'm traveling when I get this, I'll definitely look when I get back. Joseph Riggio said experiment there could be to do some NLP. Lynn, we've had quite a lot of tantra people actually looking at it. Lynn, you could again do some intimacy experiments. That was a really sweet one. She just was very genuine and open. It's interesting. These two characters are so different. Joseph was like clever and sharp and edgy. I really like him. I'm probably going to study with him more. And Lynn was just not that. It's totally different. Pete Blackaby, so one of the best yoga teachers out there. Again, you could look, if you do have a yoga practice, your experiment could be to make it a bit more rational, to alter some of your traditional postures, make them a bit more non-traditional, as per Pete's recommendation. Okay, Greg Amundsen. So this is a totally different kind of guest. The people I have on are so different. And they're all into the body. So Peter's super secular humanist. And then Greg is this and British and sort of, he's got that understated Britishness going on. Best of British. And then Greg is this enthusiastic, high-fiving Christian American. And it was just excellent. I had so much fun with both of them in totally different ways, and it's just funny. Pete's the unappreciated local cheese, and Greg's the sort of bit of rock star from abroad. Both excellent people. So yeah, he did also talk about Krav Maga, Greg. So you could really dive into that for a month, or just go to a few classes, or it's really about self-defense. And one of the things as a martial artist that I find interesting is just walking down the street with that attitude. Okay, what if that person jumped on me right now? Which is a more defensible route? Have I just walked into a place where I could be trapped? Today I was coming out of Aikido, I was walking on the beach, and in Brighton, there's some steps that go down to the sea from the kind of promenade. And it's kind of a dodgy looking guy on the steps, and he kind of followed me as I was walking. And, I just kind of clocked him and I looked at him, and it was that martial arts awareness that often stops conflict. And I don't know he was going to do anything. It's a pretty safe town. He might be completely innocent, but that kind of situational awareness that things like Krav Maga bring is super useful to play with and super interesting as a mindfulness practice. What else we got? Karina, she talked about the Alexander technique again. I'm really happy with represented many of the old traditions, or the classic traditions. We've had a few on from Feldenkrais, a few on from Alexander, good spread of different types of yogis. It seems like we've represented some of the sort of classics. If you feel like I'm missing a major practice out, sometimes it's hard for me to find people. I only got one Kung Fu person, so I don't know that much Kung Fu. One karate person, and I really made the effort to reach out to get a good couple of Tai Chi people, because I thought that was important to practice, But if I'm missing, and probably got slightly more on the Tantra front, for example, just because I went for a stage of really researching that and finding teachers, and, yoga I've been deep in myself, and Aikido I've been deep in for years, so it's probably overrepresented. And I think in some ways that's okay. And if you really feel this is a major tradition, you've had no one from that tradition on, do not bitch, do not whine, introduce me to someone good. That is a simple one. Okay, what are we up to? About 89. So we had Sindra, beautiful Sindra. So you could try his bodywork systems that he recommends for a month, for example, the foundation training. Who else? Benza. So Benza, it's from the Integral Academy. Again, this one got pushed out early because the Integral thing was launching. Experiments there, lots of stuff for the Integral world. like read one of Ken Wilber's books for a month, or look at some of the developmental altitude stuff again that Keith and I also talked about. Look through that lens at your life as an experiment. Simon Yo, so he's a ninjutsu, so the experiment could be to throw some throwing stars. No, lots of things that could come out of that, but he was often talking about training, like traditional versus modern, like competitive versus form-based. So if you do a form-based practice, I'd say as an experiment, try a competitive art for a month, like boxing or jiu-jitsu or whatever, and vice versa. You know, if you're doing just all competitive modern arts, try form-based martial art for a month, or form-based practice. Or, you know, if you do a very traditional yoga, try a modern one, or vice versa. Lots of juice in both. You know, no one's smart enough to be totally wrong, so well worth looking at. Mariana Kaplan, so she's talking about therapy and yoga, so your experiment could be to bring a little bit of those two things together. Excellent interview. Justine Mastin, so much fun. You could try one of her classes like Yoga Quest, Star Wars or Star Trek or Harry Potter online. Some of those are available on, I think it's, Yoga International. So pretty easy to get hold of, and do a free trial with them even. So that brings us to episode 93. And there's just a few more people to go before episode 100, when I will be interviewed. So if you, that will be recorded though, well in advance of hearing it, but it's going to be interesting. I'm used to being interviewed because I've been on about 10 other podcasts now this as an embodiment teacher. So I'm quite used to it, and Maud, who's interviewing me, really knows my work. So, I recommend, tuning into that one and, hearing as the tables are turned. Okay. So there's a huge number of experiments you could do. I'd say if you're getting something from this podcast, like in terms of information, you'll get way more from it if you do an experiment. And it also brings like something we can talk about as a community. So pick one of them. There's a hell of a lot that I've offered as possibilities. They were all just off the top of my head, by the way. I haven't done any preparation for this podcast. I had the idea while walking home. Just kind of excited by the idea. So even though it was late, I was like, you know what? Fuck it, let's record one. So, I hope that's been useful. I feel like we're coming to the end of a bit of the end of the middle, perhaps, of the podcast. I know we're going to be reducing down to one episode a week again. 2 episodes a week was great, but it was also a lot of work. And a lot of people just said, I can't keep up. I can't keep up. So we have had, just looking at that, I feel incredibly grateful for those conversations. I'm trying to build up. So I'm not a professional interviewer. So most of you guys know I'm an embodiment teacher, right? Like these are just like friends of mine and friends of friends that I want to chat to. I'm trying to build the embodied skill of listening. And as I said, sometimes with Julia, I really screw it up. I don't listen well. Other times there's really good rapport because I know the person, like with Gary or Paul. Other times the rapport just happens naturally. There's a few people I just naturally just hit it off with and just had loads of fun with. It tends to be, if I think of like Catherine Brunei Young, or who else was it? Nikki Nablivi, I definitely hit it off with. It tends to be the ones who were just kind of fun and swear and open-minded and up for it, like Justine, Justine Maston, various other people we've had on that. They're the kind of guests I like, the ones who are just going to really like have a real conversation rather than do some marketing spiel. That's been, I guess, the most satisfying people for me that have just been fun. And the people like Rafe, who I've actually got to know and like really built a friendship with, like that's a very cool thing that's come out of it. In terms of nationalities, I feel like, someone earlier at one point pulled me up, said you didn't have enough women on, but actually looking on it, it's pretty much 50-50 on that front. And then if we look at nationalities, it's UK, Israel, UK, Russia, UK, US, UK. So obviously at the beginning it was my mates. US, UK, Australia, UK. That was Croatia / Germany, UK, Israel, Australia, UK, US, UK, US, UK. So, I have been trying to get UK people on, and it's just who I know. And I'm wanting to get more Europeans on. UK, Ireland, UK, Poland / Sweden, UK, US, US / Japan, Germany, US. So I started to get more sort of American teachers on at one point. Germany, USA, Sweden, USA, Australia, UK, US, Japan, US, India, US. So that was when I started getting more of the US guys on. Israel, UK, Germany, US, Canada, Netherlands, Sweden, USA, Germany, USA, UK, Ireland, Canada, USA, Spain, Italy, USA, Sweden, UK, UK, Norway, Hungary, UK, USA. So I feel like it's starting to be less of a UK focus, though I'll always, give a platform to UK people because I think they don't put themselves out there enough. Someone asked me, do I discriminate against Americans? Yes, I do. You have to be extra good to come on if you're American, just because so much of the content out there is from America. I'd love to have more Europeans on, as I've said in previous episodes, like from other European countries. Sometimes there's a language barrier, but often it's something else. So there's my sort of review of all of it. I hope Maud doesn't ask me who's my favourite, because there's no way I could pick one. But looking back on it, I feel like this is a triple win, like you guys get the content, the speaker gets some promotion, and I get to build my platform and to just learn. It's a huge learning practice for me. A lot of these guys, I'm thinking they probably wouldn't. I mean, some of them are mates, like Miles Kessler or Gary, they'd speak to me, we'll have a coffee. But a lot of them I don't think would have talked to me had I not had a podcast, certainly at first. And now people will, so that's super cool in terms of my own learning. It seems like everyone's benefiting. If you haven't already, please do a please do a review on iTunes. That's how we get found. That's how we can build this thing up. At some point, I'm going to have to make some hard decisions about whether to. Probably going to do a Patreon type thing in the future. It seems like as I cut down on my work, so I'm taking a work sabbatical to train for a few years. The only way I can keep justifying this is bringing in some kind of income, but I don't want to charge for it. So yeah, probably go down the Patreon route. But the first thing I'd say is just share it with your friends, do the iTunes review, because that makes it sort of easier to find, as it were, on iTunes. But do share it on your networks, newsletters, share it out, put it on your Facebook, because the episodes are good. So people, I think it speaks for itself. So yeah, I'd say as a sort of concluding thing, if you have enjoyed this, I know it's sort of tagged on at the end of episodes, but if you're anything like me, you just start to ignore the last little bit. Yeah, do share it. Let's build this up. Everyone's winning, basically, from this podcast, and I want to keep it that way. Thanks. And I think it's high time I went and chilled out a little bit. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to get more. If you'd like to help us build the Embodied Tribe, leave a review on iTunes or share this on your social media. If you're interested in training globally, sign up to receive the newsletter at embodiedfacilitator.com. Until next time, welcome home to the body.